try.
All right, so I guess I'll just continue while they're working on the slide. So my next slide was on why the BMCP exists. So I think we all here work in marine conservation, and we all know that the Bahamas depends on healthy marine and coastal ecosystems. They support our fisheries, our tourism industry, our coastal communities, and our resilience to storms and climate change. At the same time, those ecosystems face increasing pressure from development, habitat degradation, climate impacts, and competing demands on coastal and marine space. As those pressures grow, conservation can no longer be approached as a series of isolated projects. And so it requires long-term planning, long-term financing, and long-term coordination. And that's the context in which the BMCP was created. It is a national investment in protecting the natural systems that underpin our economy, our communities, and our futures. Next slide, please. So, what is the Bahamas Marine Conservation Project? At its core, the BMCP is a debt for nature conversion. The government repurchased US $300 million in external bonds, generating US $124 million in savings, which are being reinvested over 15 years into marine conservation, coastal protection, and blue economy programs. So this is nationally financed, not donor funded. But what's important to understand is that this is not simply a funding mechanism. The financing creates an opportunity, but the real focus is what that investment makes possible. And the project finances the systems that allow conservation to work at scale. The 5 major pillars are stronger management of all 70 existing marine protected areas through management effectiveness assessments, climate change management plans across the MPA networks, a National Mangrove Management Plan to guide conservation, restoration, sustainable management of mangrove ecosystems, a marine spatial plan to support sustainable use and management of the Bahamas' marine space, and biodiversity protection zone design and implementation to strengthen ecosystem protection and biodiversity conservation across priority marine areas. These are not standalone activities. These 5 pillars work together to create the management system needed to achieve conservation outcomes at a national scale. The strategic intent is simple: protect the natural assets that underpin fisheries, tourism, coastal protection, livelihoods, and do so in a way that is enforceable and financially credible. Next slide, please. I won't spend a lot of time talking about the mechanics of the transaction, but I do need you to understand that this is not a grant program. As I said, it is a structured debt service savings by the government to marine conservation over 15 years, enabled by partners. The Inter-American Development Bank acted as lead arranger and technical advisor. The Nature Conservancy, through their Nature Bonds program, helped design the debt conversion and conservation commitments. Builder's Vision and AXA-XL provided philanthropic risk sharing and credit enhancement. The reason why this matters is because every conservation commitment is tied to a milestone. It's tied to reporting, it's tied to accountability, measurable outcomes. The agreement requires us to demonstrate progress over time and not simply spend resources. What's critical here is that these funds are governed under a legally binding conservation agreement. Delivering a program of this scale requires collaboration. So the project management unit, of which I am project manager, located within the Office of the Prime Minister, coordinates implementation, reporting, and partner engagement. But implementation happens through our national partners: Forestry, DMR, DEP, BNT, BPAF, and many others represented in this room. The National Protected Areas Steering Committee provides strategic oversight, while international partners provide technical support and independent verification. And what makes the program successful is not any single institution, it is the partnership between agencies, the collaboration, the exchange of knowledge of organizations, technical experts, and stakeholders working toward shared conservation goals. Next slide, please. And this slide shows, the next slide shows the broader roadmap. So the project is built around 11 milestones that unfold over these 15 years. The early years, that they focus on governance, capacity assessment, and establishing baseline. So we are smack in the middle of, finishing the early years. We're on the third milestone, which is the baseline MPA management effectiveness assessments. The middle milestones, milestone 4 through 8, cover the development of the National Mangrove Management Plan, for which we are here today, the rollout of climate smart management plans across 70% of existing MPAs, and the initial stages of the Marine Spatial Plan. These represent the core technical work of the project. The later milestones, 9 through 11, focus on gazettement, legal adoption, and full MSP implementation and long-term management. This sequencing ensures that when interventions are made, they are evidence-based, prioritized, and institutionally supported. Today's workshop is focused on milestone 4, the National Mangrove Management Plan, but it's important to recognize that this milestone is connected to everything that comes after it, including climate smart management plans, biodiversity protection zoning, and marine spatial planning. Next slide, please. So why a national plan for mangrove? Because of their importance, the Conservation Agreement identifies mangroves as a standalone milestone, requiring the development of a national framework for their protection, restoration, and sustainable management. That's why we're here today. Mangroves are not just another habitat type. They are one of our most valuable ecosystems in the Bahamas. They provide nursery habitat for fisheries, support biodiversity, store carbon, improve water quality, and help protect communities from storm impacts and coastal erosions. Perhaps most importantly, they connect many of the systems we depend on. Healthy mangroves support healthy seabeds. Healthy seabeds support healthy reefs. And together, those ecosystems support fisheries, tourism, and coastal resilience. Next slide, please. So the National Mangrove Management Plan is intended to do 4 things. First, protect nationally significant mangrove ecosystems. Second, identify restoration opportunities and priority intervention areas. Third, improve coordination across the agencies and organizations that have responsibilities relating to mangroves. And fourth, establish a framework that can support long-term implementation and financing. Ultimately, the goal is not simply to produce a plan. The goal is to create a practical roadmap that can guide decision-making, investment, restoration, and management actions for years to come. Next slide, please. So where are we today? One of the most encouraging things about the project is that it has moved beyond design and into implementation. The governance framework is in place. The capacity assessment has been completed. The management effectiveness assessments are now underway. And milestone 4, the National Mangrove Management Plan, is now actively progressing through GIS analysis, stakeholder engagement, and the planning process that begins with this workshop. In other words, the program is no longer being built, it is being delivered. Next slide, please. Throughout 2026, our focus is execution. The MET assessments are being carried out across the protected area network. Work on the National Mangrove Management Plan is being kicked off today. climate smart management planning is advancing. And across the program, we're continuing to strengthen coordination, stakeholder engagement, and implementation systems. This is the year where planning begins translating into action. Next slide. So the National Mangrove Management Plan is not just about mangroves. It's about how we manage natural assets that support communities, livelihoods, biodiversity, and climate resilience throughout the Bahamas. The success of this milestone will depend on the knowledge, experience, and collaboration represented in this room. On behalf of the Project Management Unit, thank you for being part of this process, and we look forward to working with all of you as the plan develops and unravels. Thank you.
Good morning again, everyone. As Director Harnick would have stated, no matter how much time goes into planning events, something always gonna go awry, right? So now is the time for everyone in the room to learn more about the other person, the person next to you, the table away from you. So we're gonna do some introductions and an icebreaker. Don't sound so excited. I'm gonna say it again so I can get a little bit of an applause. Some introductions and an icebreaker. Huzzah! No? Okay. So we're going to start off with this table here, and then we're going to go around. You're going to say your name, title, and organization, and give us a little fun facts.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lindsay Chikar. I'm the Deputy Director at Friends of the Environment in Abaco. Fun fact. I look around the room and I see a lot of old classmates, and I feel like I'm a COB reunion. Proud of all of us.
I am Olivia Patterson-Lara. Good morning, everybody. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of the Environment. I don't have any graphics here, but I do have former field trip leaders. I have a photo this morning of the two of us from the 90s, and I was a student on my first time forest field trip. So I guess where I'm leading with that is that there's a lot of us in this room with a lot of potential to impact San Bahamians, and you never know when that can happen.
Good morning, everyone. Seth Hakabo. I'm with Environmental Defense Fund, Director of our Ocean Resilience Initiatives. Fun fact, I really need to work on my Bahamian passport, so I will stay home.
Welcome to the Bahamas, sir. Welcome back. Good day, everyone. Marcia Musgrove, Director for the Nature Conservancy's Northern Caribbean Program, which covers our work in the Bahamas and Caicos Islands. Fun fact, several weeks ago, after 30 years, I decided to go back on a badminton court, and I woke up early the next morning. But I'm going to go back again.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Clarissa Hallward with the Perry Institute for Marine Science. Fun fact, I'm not Bahamian, but I'm from the Virgin Islands, and my family owns one of the oldest operating rum distilleries in the Caribbean.
Good morning to you all. I'm Chris Russell, retired Director of Forestry, serving 40 years in the public service. I have my own environmental advisory and natural resource planning firm, which I'm very excited about. Fun fact, I'm happy to be working with all of you guys, and I see Seth is here. I'm also the local liaison for the Environmental Defense Fund. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Lakeisha Anderson-Rule, the Executive Director of Bahamas National Trust. Fun fact, I've been a diver for 21 years. I've been out of the water for about 5 years pushing paper. However, I am back daily. I went for a dive in August a few months ago, and I think I'll probably try it out again. Thanks to Lindy. Good morning, everyone. Keisha Charles, Environmental Officer at the Department of Environmental Plan and Protection. Fun facts, I don't technically know how to swim, but I'm always in the water. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Randy Bowe, Department of Environmental Planning and Protection. Fun fact is that I really don't have a fun fact on my mind. I guess I'll say that I'm left-handed. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tasha Turnquist. I am the policy advisor at the Nature Conservancy Northern Improvement Program. And fun fact is I like to practice martial arts, starting with block.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexio Brown. I am the Marine Conservation Program Manager at the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund. And one fun fact is I practice archery and I shoot for the national team.
Good morning, everyone. Jacqueline to the Blackburn. I'm the officer for the PMU as Project Management Unit from Bahamas Conversion Project for Marine Conservation. Fun fact, I look around the room and I see quite a number of my students as usual. And I'm very lucky to be leading this project that we have this great big group project to finish. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharanda Miller. I am the Marine Management Project Specialist for the Nature Conservancy's Northern Caribbean Program. And I'm also the project manager for the Bahamas Conservation Project with the Nature Conservancy. One fun fact, I'm going to piggyback on what Chizunga said. I have a lot of colleagues that I went to school with in the room. And I also have a couple of professors in the room, and one high school teacher too. I'll keep y'all guessing on who that is, but yeah.
Hello, good morning. My name is Samantha Nicole Miller. I'm with the Department of Marine Resources for the Gas Conversion Project. And one fun fact is I like to swim in the water, but I don't like to swim alone in the deep.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Megan Fountain. I am a conservation practitioner at the Nature Conservancy. One fun fact about myself is I practice golf on the weekends. Recently just started, so I'm not the best, but I practice.
Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Matthias Johansson with the University of the Bahamas, Assistant Professor of Marine Science. It's not a fun fact, but I do have former students in the room, colleagues all over the place. I think this is all really exciting. It's such a beautifully close-knit community. My fun fact is my pet project is getting Bahamian students into the water. So I'm working on my assistant instructor, or I have my assistant instructor. I'm working on my instructor certification. And we partner with the Grand Bahama GD Scuba. So if you guys want to come up to Grand Bahama, we'll do a super deal to get you scuba certified. And we're working on getting UB on board for that sort of thing as well. They're a little funny about our scuba class, even though it actually exists.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jewel Benedy. I'm with the Nature Conservancy's Northern Caribbean Program. I'm a conservation practitioner, and I focus on climate adaptation. And a fun fact about me is I love gardening.
Good morning, everybody. I feel Shane Sweeting. I am the M&E officer for BPAV. One fun fact about me, I'm a mom's mom. Like I'm really involved, and I love doing that.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Brandon Bethel. I'm an assistant professor in marine science from the University of Bahamas. My fun fact is related to her fun fact. I think most of you in here, if you are looking for me, you can find me at the Bonefish Farm almost all the time. And the reason for that is that when I had, I can't remember the class, but when I had her class in COB, she took me to it. She introduced me to it, and I became an oceanographer because of it. That's my fun fact.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Justin Taylor. I'm an administrative cadet at the computer science at the NGIS Center. Fun fact about me is that I always play pawn the e4, but to get into the Italian game by playing chess.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Humphrey. I'm the NGIS Center. NGIS Center. Fun fact about me, I play rugby and I represent rugby.
Good morning, all. My name is Solomon Gibson. I am a monitoring and evaluation specialist at the Nature Conservancy Border for Green Division. Fun fact about me is I'm weekend. I like to fly FPV boats.
Morning, everyone. My name is Felicio, Chief Planner at the Department of Physical Planning. Fun fact about me, I just started backyard gardening. At the moment, everybody is still alive and well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Zika McKenzie. I'm an assistant professor at Boundary. Fun fact about me, I like statistics and remote science.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandra Goodman. I'm from the Department of Local Government. One thing, a fun fact about me, I am an island girl. So most definitely, I always say if I'm asked would I want to come back as into the next night, I'll always say a fish because I love the water.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Peyton Taylor. I'm a senior officer at the DRM Authority. One fun fact, I'm actually sitting next to my college guys.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Ravina Roberts Hanna, and it's so proud. I'm really happy to be here. I'm just passing through and I'm seeing all of my students as well, and very proud of where they are. A fun fact, I attended one of Michael Jackson's last concerts. Yes! I like to do the moonwalk. I might do that during the session.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Taylor Ferguson. I am the Grants and Communications Coordinator for Waterkeepers Bahamas. And a fun fact is I'm sitting next to somebody that saw Michael Jackson in person. And now I'm going to be asking her about this all.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jordan Hutchison, the Ethics and Compliance Officer at BPAP. Fun fact about me, I have an 8-year-old purebred Yorkshire Terrier from Azerbaijan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shakara Lightbourne. I'm a grants manager at the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund. Fun fact about me, I consider myself to be a little bit of an amphibian because I love land and sea, and I have a background in agriculture, but my first job was a dolphin trainer and scuba diver. Like the future, I'd like to get back into the water as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Makeda Sergiu. I am a research assistant at the Perry Institute for Marine Science, and the fun fact is I like to draw in my free time, and I make my own stickers. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jade Bethel. I'm the Communications Officer at BPAP. And a fun fact about me is that I sing in 5 different languages. No, I'm not going to.
Pleasant good morning. Glenn Lightbourne, Family Island Administrator, representing the Department of Local Government and the Director. Fact, our department represents the majority of the Bahamas, the 33 Family Island districts. The fun fact is I gave myself away when I came in with my computer and bag, and I inadvertently had my towel under my arm. I plan at the end of this conference to go take a swim.
Good morning again. Nikki Pearson from the PMU at the Chem. Fun fact, I make beer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamel Deal. I'm the Senior Government Relations and Policy Advisor for the Bahamas National Trust. And I guess a fun fact about me is that I love music. I grew up learning to play the violin. I do play the piano. Good morning. My name is Rashima Ingram, the Caribbean Program Director with Conefish and Tarpon Trust. And my fun fact is that I can drive in Nassau. And I feel like because I can drive in Nassau, I can drive anywhere in the world, and I own that. But there isn't many vehicles that I cannot drive.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Suzanne Russell Dorset. I am a GIS analyst / project manager / BCP monitoring at the Bahamas Department of Meteorology. Fun fact about me, I love cooking Asian food.
Good morning, everyone. Lindy Knowles, Acting Director of Science Policy and Senior Science Officer at the Bahamas Marine Conservation Project. Fun fact, I guess I have over like 2,000 dives or something at this point.
Well, how do you follow that? Good morning, everyone. My name is Shara Moss. I'm a consultant. I'm working on this project, so I'll be presenting today. A fun fact, Libby helped me out with this. He said that of everyone in the room, I've probably worked for and with the most organizations, more than anyone. That's everyone.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Zero Jackson, the Executive Director at Waterkeepers Bahamas. My fun fact is I don't have as much dives as Lindy, but I do have some dives, and I love the ocean. I could bear any animal except the stingray.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Letitia Gibson. I'm the project manager at the Forestry Unit for the Bahamas Debt Conversion Project for Marine Conservation. Fun fact, and I say this full of shame, I spent $76 4 years ago on half a jackfruit tree. I don't want a jackfruit. I don't want to blame anybody, but I found it online on Chick Charney Farms. But the botanist and the plant person I am, I took the seeds, grew seedlings, sold them, and made a profit. And I also planted one of the seeds in my yard, and now I have jackfruits free all year round.
Good morning. My name is Julie Saunders. I am Assistant Forest Officer with the Forestry Unit under the Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources. And a fun fact about me, I'm going to a wedding this weekend, and I am super excited.
Good morning, my name is Donovan Hepburn. I am the Mangrove Officer, part of the Officer of the project. One fact about me is I've been to Carnival Engineer.
Hi everyone, I'm Monique Ford. I'm the Mangrove Coordinator, the consultant with the Forestry Unit under this project. And listening to all your fun facts, and me feel like my fun fact ain't really that fun. But anyway, I love to dance. And I'm going to pass it over to Director, and then we're going to go to our virtual participants.
Good morning, everyone. So Danielle Hannick, Acting Director of the Forestry Unit. So fun facts. I mean, this is the issue of going last, right? So what is my fun fact? My fun fact is when I was 8 years old, I traveled from Nassau to Kenya by myself. You know, you had the big thing there in British Airways, and that's when the flights from Nassau to British Airways was like 10 hours. And so the joke about it is I went to go visit my dad for the first time in Rwanda, and he picked me up in Kenya. And it was the first summer I got to see elephants
in real life. And so that was a cool thing. So,
All right, I don't know, that sounded real good. That sounded like I could have sang just now. To our virtual participants, we can get started. We could start with Dr. Dahlgren.
Dr. Dahlgren.
Sorry, there's a big echo here. Craig Dahlgren, I'm the Executive Director of the Perry Institute for Marine Science. And I don't know how fun this is, but it's a fact that this week marks the 34th anniversary of the first time I started doing research on mangroves in the Bahamas.
Anne Aubrey.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We can hear you. Okay, my name is Anne Aubrey. I'm the Executive Director with the Bahamas Fly Fishing Industry Association. And my fun facts for me is that being an educator for more than 25 years, teaching from kindergarten up to leading a higher education, I had great fear of the environment, the sea, and I was a typical Bahamian that for all the mangroves and the wetlands, the swamp. And in the midst of that, I was one of them in education, in education. And my fun fact is getting over that fear. I have held a snake in my hand, something that I would have never done, and I've gone fishing, and I've caught my first home fish. You would have had to know me to realize how significant a fun fact that is for me. So I'm happy to be delivered and connected to our beautiful environment of the Bahamas.
I guess I'll go next. Steve Schill. I work with Nature Conservancy Caribbean Science Team, and it was great to hear those introductions and a lot of you I've worked with before. But one congratulations to Craig on all those years doing mangrove work. One fact is I am based in Utah, and even though I'm in Utah, I'm still able to dive. I dive at the Utah Aquarium, which has a 300,000 gallon shark tank, and there's 7 species of sharks in the tank. And I get to help clean that tank. So that's how I stay connected to the marine environment in Utah.
I'll go next. This is Kristen Angola. I'm the Executive Director of the Small Island Sustainability Research Complex at University of the Bahamas. And my fun fact or random fact is that I speak Spanish and I've lived in Costa Rica 3 separate times in my life.
Good morning, Alliance. My name is Marie Jones. I'm with the TNC Jamaica program. And my fun fact is that as a child, I had a swimsuit that I was afraid of because my father had taken me to this rough beach and dumped me.
So if I saw the things were coming out for the weekend trips, that was me crying and running away. So when I became a marine scientist now, everybody was surprised because we were the ones who was afraid of water at the beginning. So that's my fun fact.
I believe that's everyone. Hello? Is that everyone online? Yes, okay. Participating in the icebreaker. I now have the opportunity to introduce our guest speaker, bringing remarks on behalf of the ministry, Honorable S. Obie Roberts. He is our Parliamentary Secretary for the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources. He's a Member of Parliament for Southern Shores, and yesterday he spoke in the House of Assembly in reference to the overall ministry of the importance of our Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources. And so we are happy to have him here today, and we want to welcome him as he's able to now bring remarks on behalf of our ministry. Please join me in welcoming Parliamentary Secretary Roberts. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's interesting hearing some of the person's fun facts when they spoke about their past or their history. It's interesting for me, growing up, I always loved nature myself. And growing up in the bush, in caves, swimming in the ocean, as well as lakes. So when I was given the opportunity to be appointed to this ministry, I was very, very receptive to it because it brought back so many memories on so many different levels. But it'll be great to learn far more in depth on the aspects, all aspects of the Ministry of Environment, particularly with forestry. Good morning to distinguished guests and colleagues, representatives for the government agencies, non-government organizations, private sector, academia, community partners, and all stakeholders gathered here today. On behalf of the Honorable Minister, Zane Leiper, Minister of Environment and Natural Resources, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this historic conception workshop for the development of the Bahamas, the first National Mangrove Management Plan. Today marks a significant milestone not only for the Forestry Unit, but for our nation as a whole. The fact that we have brought together such a diverse group of experts, practitioners, policymakers, community representatives, and conservation partners demonstrates the importance of the task before us, that we share a national responsibility. We have all safeguarded one of our country's most valuable resources. Mangroves are far more than trees growing along our coastlines. They are natural infrastructure. They protect our communities from storm surges and coastal erosion, provide critical nursery habitats for commercially imported fish species, support biodiversity, improve our water quality, capture and store carbon, and contribute significantly to the livelihoods and the well-being of Bahamians throughout our archipelago. For our nation, such as the Bahamas, comprised of low-lying islands and surrounded by the ocean, healthy mangroves ecosystems are not simply as an environmental asset, they are a national necessity. As the government agency responsible for the management and protection of the mangrove resources, the Forestry Unit recognizes both the opportunities and the challenges associated with ensuring a long-term sustainability. While many important conservation efforts have taken place across the country, this National Mangrove Management Plan represents our first coordinated national framework for the management, restoration, protection, monitoring, and sustainable use of the mangrove ecosystem throughout the Bahamas. This plan is not intended to sit on the shelf. It is being designed as a practical roadmap that will guide decision-making and support policy development, strengthen management actions, improve stakeholder coordinations, and ensure that the future generations inherit healthy and resilient mangrove ecosystem. Importantly, this initiative comes at a critical time for our country as we continue to face increasing pressures from climate change, stronger storm, sea level rises, coastal development, and habitat degradation. At the same time, the Bahamas has positioned itself as a global leader in innovative conservation financing through the Bahamas Debt Conversion Project. The development of the National Mangrove Management Plan directly supports the objectives of this landmark initiative. Through the Debt Conversion Project, our nation has committed to strengthening the conservation outcomes and enhancing the ecosystem resilience and protecting our natural capital. Mangroves play a central role in achieving these goals. The Forestry Unit is proud to be a key partner in this effort. Through this management plan, we have the opportunity to align national conservation priorities with local needs, scientific knowledge, traditional understanding, and the international commitment. More importantly, we have an opportunity to create a framework that delivers real and measurable benefits for our people, for our economy, and our environment. However, the success of this plan cannot rest with Forestry Unit alone. The expertise gathered in this room represents decades of experience across multiple sectors. Your insight, your recommendations, your lessons learned, and perspectives will be essential in shaping the management plan. That is practical, inclusive, science-based, and responsive to the realities of the Bahamas. Today, therefore, not merely the beginning of a planning exercise, it is the beginning of a national conservation above how we value, manage, and invest in our mangroves ecosystems for generations to come. I encourage each of you to engage openly and constructively throughout this workshop challenge. Challenge assumptions, share ideas, identify opportunities, help us build a plan that reflects the collective knowledge and aspirations of our country. Together, we have an opportunity to create something truly transformative, a management framework that strengthens our conservations, supports our sustainable development, enhances climate resilience for future Bahamian mangroves. On behalf of the Forestry Unit, I thank you for your participation, your commitment, and your willingness to contribute to this important national initiative. I look forward to the discussions ahead and to the successful development of the Bahamas and the first National Mangrove Management Plan. Thank you, and I wish you a productive and engaged workshop.
All right, thank you, Minister Roberts. I'll move on.
All right, with protocol being established, and now we know everyone that's in the room, we have a little activity. So this requires your phone to scan the QR code that's coming up. And we want to get your opinion. That's basically what this workshop is about, right? Ensuring that we have stakeholder feedback from NGOs to government agencies as well as communities. So, what is one word that comes to mind when you think of Bahamian mangroves? What is one word that comes to mind when you think of Bahamian mangroves? We have 5 minutes. Okay, now I have to go back to when I was teaching. Hands up for everyone that has completed the poll. Okay, we still got some more persons filling it out. So let's go through some of the words that we see here. A large number of persons, wait, I see 44 or 46 responded. That means a few persons didn't take my vote. I hope that's not no one in here, right? So protection. Protection being the one that is the largest, and so a lot of you feel that way about our Bahamian mangroves. Then we have a nursery, resilient, beautiful, and an important one that I see up there just before we move to our next presentation is threatened. So all of these words in here, they combine to basically show how we feel about mangroves within this room. And throughout this workshop, we will definitely be discussing a lot of these words and how to come up with solutions for the mangroves that we feel are threatened. Because it's important to us because they provide us with protection, biodiversity, right? Biodiversity, they are nursery, resilience, these important words. So coming right now, we have Ms. Letitia Gibson, who's just going to walk us through our workshop agenda and what to expect as being a part of this workshop.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming here and participating in our workshop. We are pleased to see representation from government agencies, community organizations, NGOs, as well as academia, and our community stakeholders and partners across the Bahamas. Before we begin, I would like to make a few housekeeping announcements. Please be advised that today's workshop is being recorded for documentation purposes. Also be minded that photographs are being taken. If you do not wish for your photograph to be taken, just make mention to one of our members around the room, and we will note that. We also kindly ask that cell phones, laptops, and any other electronic devices be placed on silent mode so that there is minimal disruption during the workshop process. Today's workshop represents the official launch of an important collaborative process. More importantly, it marks the beginning of a conversation that will help shape the future of management, conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of mangrove ecosystems across the archipelago. Before we begin the technical presentations and discussions, I would like to briefly walk everyone through the purpose of today's workshop and what you can expect throughout the day. Let's start with the agenda. Next slide, please. So everyone has an agenda in front of them. Today's workshop has been designed to introduce the NMMP process, present the proposed technical approach, and create opportunities for meaningful stakeholder engagement. This morning we did begin with an overview of the project by Mrs. Pearson, and we will introduce the technical work streams that will contribute to the development of the National Mangrove Management Plan. From here, you will hear from the technical consultants who will discuss the spatial analysis component, stakeholder engagement process, socioeconomic assessments, and the broader planning framework that will guide the development of the NMMP. Following those presentations, we will transition into facilitated discussions and interactive sessions where participants will have an opportunity to collaborate, provide feedback, identify priorities, to share ideas and highlight the challenges that are being faced in our communities today, and share information that may support the planning process. This afternoon session will focus on collaboration, identifying opportunities for partnership, discussing data needs and information gaps, and gathering the perspectives necessary to ensure that the final plan is informed by both science and stakeholder experience. By the end of the day, we hope that everyone leaves with a clear understanding of where we are headed and how you can contribute to the journey ahead. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This now brings us to the desired outcomes for today. Firstly, we want participants to gain a clear understanding of the project's objectives, scope, timeline, and expected deliverables. Second, we aim to identify existing initiatives, data sets, technical resources, and ongoing work that can support the planning process and help avoid duplication of effort. Third, we want to capture stakeholder perspectives on opportunities, challenges, and priorities associated with mangrove management throughout the Bahamas. Fourth, we seek to strengthen coordination and collaboration amongst the organization represented here today. And finally, we hope to establish a pathway for continued engagement throughout the duration of the project so that stakeholders remain involved as technical assessments and draft outputs are developed. These outcomes will ensure that the National Mangrove Management Plan is both technically robust and broadly informed by people and organizations who work with the ecosystems every day. Next slide. As we move through today's sessions, I encourage everyone to view this workshop as a collaborative working session. Your participation is one most valuable contributions to this process. Throughout the day, we encourage you to share your expertise, ask questions, challenge assumptions, that is very important, identify gaps, and contribute lessons learned from your own experiences. Many of the individuals and organizations represented here possess specialized knowledge, data sets, historical information, field experience, local perspectives that may not be readily available through traditional research methods. That information is critical. Whether your expertise is in conservation, planning, fisheries, tourism, climate adaptation, coastal development, policy, community engagement, or natural resource management, your perspectives can help shape the final product. We also ask that participants engage openly and constructively throughout the discussions, recognizing that effective mangrove management requires an interdisciplinary approach and collaboration across sectors. This workshop is only the first step in what will be an ongoing engagement process, and your continued participation throughout the project will be essential. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so these are our major goals. Together, we aim to deliver towards the end of this Inception workshop effective management, healthy ecosystems, resilient communities, sustainable financing, and a legacy for future generations. Next slide. Before we begin today's technical sessions, we have already introduced the teams, the partners that are presented earlier. We had Ms. Pearson from the PMU. We've also had Ms. Hannick from the Forestry Unit, who is the lead on the NMMP delivery under the project. Our team will be working closely with technical consultants, government agencies, project partners, and stakeholders throughout this planning process. Each member of the team brings a unique set of skills and expertise that will contribute to the successful delivery of the project. And throughout the day, you have an opportunity to hear from several of them directly. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the project team for the Forestry Unit that's leading the implementation of the National Mangrove Management Plan. You have Director Hannick, who is the acting director of the Forestry Unit, Megan Bullard, forestry officer, and also the team lead. You have myself, Letitia Gibson, project manager, Renique Forbes, mangrove coordinator. You have Jalise Saunders, administrative assistant and also the assistant forest officer at the Forestry Unit, Amanda Williams, Forestry Assistant 3 at the Forestry Unit, our newly engaged mangrove officer, Mr. Donovan Hepburn, and Mr. Terrell Thompson from the BNGIS Center, who is a GIS Technician 3. And you can reach out to us for any questions that you may have. We look forward to working alongside all of you over the coming months as we collectively advance this important national initiative. With that, I once again would like to thank everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your time, your expertise, and your willingness to contribute to this process. I hope today's discussions are productive, engaging, and informative. Let us now move into the workshop proceedings and begin with our first agenda item. Thank you.
All right, first we will have, y'all good at me? Good, good. First we will have the presentation on TNC's partnership, the Nature Conservancy's partnership and project contributions overview by Ms. Jewel Beneby.
All right, good morning again, everyone. Morning. So my job this morning is to introduce the role of TNC in this project. And I'd just like to say thank you all for being here. So as mentioned earlier, my name is Jewel Beneby with the Nature Conservancy's Northern Caribbean Program, and I'm a conservation practitioner and I focus on climate adaptation. So I don't have my slides up, but I'll just keep rolling. Okay. So I'll just keep going. As mentioned at the top of the morning, in November 2024, the government of the Bahamas, in partnership with the Nature Conservancy and the Bahamas Protected Area Fund, launched the 15-year Bahamas Debt Conversion Project for marine conservation to advance improved ocean management and climate resilience in the Bahamas through effective management of the country's existing MPA network, develop a National Mangrove Management Plan, completion of a marine spatial plan that will balance out the blue economy development with conservation across the country's entire ocean space. So the debt refinancing transaction executed to provide funding for this long-term marine conservation project represents the single largest commitment to date by the government of the Bahamas towards marine conservation and was facilitated by TNC's Nature Bonds program in collaboration with the Inter-American Development Bank, Builders Asset Management, AXAXL, Standard Chartered, and the Bahamas National Trust and others. Next slide. The Bahamas is one of 6 countries that the Nature Conservancy's Nature Bonds program has helped to generate new funding to protect critical ecosystems and support thriving communities, unlocking approximately $1 billion for conservation worldwide to date. As you will likely be familiar with, considering your role in the sector, one of the biggest obstacles to ocean protection and sustainable use is insufficient funding. Programs like this work to help to fill this gap. In the Bahamas, this program also builds on previous collaborative efforts by TNC. Next slide, please. The government of the Bahamas and other partners to establish the Bahamas Protected Area Fund more than 10 years ago. Consequently, BPAF was well positioned to step into the role of independent conservation fund manager for this project to ensure that funding flows directly to eligible community stakeholders, as well as implementing government agencies. During the course of this project, TNC will provide compliance verification and reporting support through its Nature Bonds team, while our Bahamas team will facilitate capacity building and technical assistance from TNC to the government and other key partners to support implementation excellence. Next slide. In 2023, TNC, along with the Forestry Unit, Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, Perry Institute for Marine Science, Waterkeepers Bahamas, Friends of the Environment, Bahamas National Trust, the Blue Action Lab, and the Bahamas Agriculture and Marine Science Institute signed an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, to accelerate the extensive mangrove restoration work needed in Grand Bahama and Abaco post-Hurricane Dorian. In addition to significant restoration needs for those two islands, the MOU partners also recognize the need for a more comprehensive policy approach to mangrove restoration and the management in the Bahamas for thriving marine life and communities that depend on a fully functioning ecosystem. So this idea was integrated under the Bahamas Debt Conversion Project for Marine Conservation through the inclusion of the National Mangrove Management Plan to be developed by the Forestry Unit with support from partners. The Nature Conservancy is providing technical support through conducting a comprehensive assessment of efforts related to the conservation and sustainable management of mangrove ecosystems in the Bahamas over the past 15 years. This will include reviewing existing policies, plans, strategies, processes, and technologies, and evaluating their effectiveness in supporting long-term ecosystem sustainability. The analysis will also examine both the global and local best practices, determine priorities for effective management, identifying gaps and actions needed for threat abatement, and provide recommendations to address the gaps. The Bahamas Undersea Research Foundation, BERF, which is Perry Institute's locally registered company, has been contracted to support this effort. Preparation of the corresponding gap analysis report will be a key input for development of the National Mangrove Management Plan of the Bahamas. And we expect to complete our assessment and submit a validated report to the Forestry Unit by May of 2027. Last slide. So the aim for us in this Inception workshop is to advise the key stakeholders, which are yourselves, on the National Mangrove Management Planning process and any opportunities there are for collaboration. We also wish to gather initial feedback on management efforts, existing gaps, and priority areas. We also wish to help foster a shared ownership of the national plan. So the Nature Conservancy and the Bahamas Undersea Research Foundation looks forward to collaborating with all of you on this important and transformative work. So thank you. Next up, you'll hear from my colleague, Dr. Steve Schill, who's going to give a presentation just overviewing some mapping tools that we have developed, the Nature Conservancy has developed, and he was not able to be here physically today, but he is online. So he should be able to share his screen, and I think you can take it away from here, Steve.
Okay, is my audio coming through?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. First slide. I just wanted to present some of the work that we've done, so all of you are aware. This is work that I presented at the NMMP conference 3 years ago. but it's a data set that we've spent quite a bit of time on, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to talk about it a little so that you were aware that it was available for use in your mangrove management work. So there have been many inventories of Bahamian mangroves over the years, and you can see these different products and the total hectare that was calculated for each of these mapping efforts. Some of these are global. And so we can see that mapping mangroves in the Bahamas is a very challenging thing. We have a lot of variation in terms of height and density, and being able to separate coppice from mangrove has been problematic. And many of the efforts have relied on coarser satellite imagery, 10 meter and 30 meter, which are freely available. Excuse me. But the higher resolution data sets that are less than 2 meter resolution are typically very expensive. And this 4 meter product, Planet Scope, we had an opportunity to get a mosaic of Planet Scope imagery for the entire region. And we wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to see what we could map using these data sets. So SkySat comes in 0.5 meter and 2 meter resolution, as you can see here. SuperDove is about 3 to 4 meter resolution. And you can see the difference that resolution makes going from a 30 meter, this is an area in Grenada, where you have the Global Mangrove Watch data and the extent that was mapped, looking at the Sentinel-2 with the European Space Agency. The identification of these fringing and narrow mangroves becomes more apparent. But when you increase the resolution down to 4 meter, you can see the added detail that you can get from these types of platforms. And so this satellite image mosaic was created in 2019 using over 35,000 dove scenes that were all radiometrically corrected. And we took the opportunity to use this information to develop a benefit map for all the shallow areas. It's a 13 class benefit map that's available at this website to download. But after that project was finished, we wanted to see what we could do using these data to map mangroves. And so in May 2022, we went to Andros. We also did a lot of field work in Grand Bahama and Abaco. And we collected a lot of transects, and we were trying to delineate patterns where mangroves could be identified and understand the elevational differences. And these are some of the drone shots from Andros, and you can see the extensive short mangroves that persist across Andros and other areas of the Bahamas. But a lot of these are not being captured by these coarser satellite resolutions. And so we wanted to identify these areas where there are raised ridges, what I call these coppice rings, where we have coppice hardwood here, and then there's a transition zone, and then mangrove persists at lower elevations. And these are very subtle changes. And you can see them in the Planet Scope imagery here, where these darker red areas indicate coppice forests. And then you can see those rings around those higher elevations. And we wanted to be able to map all of this shorter, less dense mangrove. And so you can see these coppice areas. And a lot of the coarser scale products just don't discriminate between the coppice and the mangrove areas. And so we developed a segmentation algorithm using e-cognition with a rule set with the training data that we had created to try to identify all of these coppice areas. And spectrally, there was a difference that we could see. And so the process that here's an area in Andros that I want to show you an example. This is the Planet Scope 3-meter imagery. You can see a very dense, tall stretch of mangroves right here along the edges. And then the rest is sparse mangroves, but everywhere that you see in red represents vegetation that is photosynthesizing. And when we overlay the global products, we can see that it's not doing a good job of capturing these other areas. And so what we did is we took the Planet Scope imagery, we segmented it. That means we grouped pixels that were very similar, and then we classified those. And so this represents a new footprint of where mangroves are and where the mud flats are. And then we could create a vegetation index using that infrared energy, or we had to essentially separate out the denser mangrove stands to the more sparse. So green represents denser mangrove. These redder and orange areas represent less dense or sparse mangrove. And so when we compare the products that we were able to do, and we did this throughout the entire archipelago, if we zoom in and we see these coppice ridges, the global products don't discriminate between those, but the classification we were able to do in e-cognition was able to delineate between the coppice and the mangrove. And then in addition, we have the level of NDVI that was calculated for each of these objects. And you can see that here in this image. So this is the extent of the mangrove with the coppice ridge separated, and this is the calculation of the NDVI by object. And so all of this is available on ArcGIS Online. Now, we calculated a total of 5,435 square kilometers, which is 38% of the land area of the Bahamas. Now, a lot of these areas are wetland. There may not be mangroves there. The Planet Scope imagery was not able to do a good job of, in those areas where there's very few mangroves, distinguishing between wetland and mangrove. So we can consider these areas areas that there may be potential mangrove. And we've done a lot of verification work in Grand Bahama and Abaco, and we feel like our footprint there is very accurate. But there is additional expertise and field work to identify the rest of the islands. New Providence we feel is very accurate. And one thing that we delivered, we didn't just map mangroves, but we mapped the coppice and the pine. And so if we zoom in on the product, you can see here in an area south of New Providence that the red area indicates barren or paved areas, the orange indicates coppice, the green indicates pine, and the lighter green represents the mangrove or the wetland mangrove mix, areas where there could potentially be mangrove as based on the reflectance. And you can see the results here for the western end of Grand Bahama. Those areas of light green represent mangrove. Here's an area in Abaco showing the detail. So it's not just wetlands, but it's a land cover product based on these 6 classes that we're able to identify. And here's an area in Great Anagua where that needs to be an example of an area that needs to be further validated. Areas that are non-coppice that seem to be wet, where there could potentially be mangrove growing. And so this is a product that we want to make available, and it is available, and we can use things like coastal DEM, which we have, to further separate out these areas based on elevation. There's also the new version 2 global canopy height model that was produced by Meta that used machine learning to be able to identify heights. And it uses high resolution 1 meter satellite imagery to do this. And this product came out in March, and I think it's something that should be looked into. You can download the tiles. There's 84 tiles for this product across the Bahamas. And then also, this product is uploaded into the bluecarbon.tnc.org, which allows you to look at changes in NDVI over time using 3 different satellite base maps. So this is a way of looking at how mangroves are recovering. And another thing I want to point out is this product represents pre-Dorian conditions, because the satellite imagery was all collected between 2017 and 2019 before Dorian. So it's a great way to track the recovery, because it represents the footprint of these wetland areas before Dorian. So that's everything I wanted to present. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and take any questions if we have time.
Hi, Steve. Yes, we have about 5 minutes of questions. Do we have any questions in the room? We have one.
So I have a quick question.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Remote sensing that you're doing, could it be possible that you use like a feature extraction to extract the NDVI for a particular mangrove area that you guys identified, and it's certain that it's a mangrove, to then use a regression analysis, and then somehow use a regression analysis to then make a prediction using like random forest regression, boost it to then kind of fill in those gaps for the other the other islands that are any classification in terms of like the various different type of thematics that we're trying to get for those islands.
Now there are, we've used a rule set developed in Meat Cognition to extract where these wetland areas are. And so using something like random forests combined with field data to further.
Virtual participants, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, please? Awesome. So we're going to get started on the, well, not necessarily second half, but the midday portion. And I'll be talking to you a bit about developing the process of developing the National Mangrove Management Plan. We're going to go through that, and then I'm going to introduce our consultants to then come on and give you a little bit more details into what their methodology and what plan looks like. So why are we here? I feel like we have exhausted this answer, but I want to reiterate and tell you again, we are here because we need to gather your input, identify the existing information and the gaps that are there. We want to introduce the NMMP process, as well as support an inclusive, coordinated national approach. Next slide. Inside your folders, you would have a document that says the National Mangrove Management Plan supporting information. And inside that plan, it goes through a lot of the things that I'm going to present on, but it also identifies our goal statement, which says to establish a coordinated and inclusive national framework for the conservation, restoration, sustainable management, and monitoring of mangrove ecosystems across the Bahamas, guiding priorities, targets, governance, mechanisms, and actions that support their long-term sustainable use. So why do we need the National Mangrove Management Plan? I think that a lot of you in the room already have an idea as to why this is necessary, but let's go through it. We are experiencing rising pressures. You know, we live inside a low-lying country, which means that we are impacted by storms, heavily impacted by climate change. And then on top of that, we have different national priorities as well, such as tourism, and that fuels development and things like that as well. So we also have a lot of information. I know that a lot of our workshops, one of the things that I've identified is that one of the main things is that we have policies upon policies. And we also have data. However, the reason for this National Mangrove Management Plan is because we want to start to consolidate some of that data. And we want to acknowledge that this is a shared responsibility. This is not just on the Forestry Unit, the Nature Conservancy, the Bahamas National Trust. This is for all of us, so that all of our voices can go into creating this plan for right now and for future generations. Inside that document, you will see our National Mangrove Management Plan objectives. And I'll quickly go through each one. Establish national mangrove conservation, restoration, and management priorities. We want to identify priority areas for restoration, assess sustainable financing options. That's a big conversation that's happening. Strengthen coordination among our stakeholders. Clearly define mangrove targets, restoration targets. Integrate mangrove management priorities within existing and future MPAs. Clarify roles and perspectives and responsibilities. Support evidence-based decision-making through policy review. Next slide. What are the key components of this management plan? We go into detail in the document, but just a quick overview. We have stakeholder engagement and consultations. So this is not the first time or the only time that you will be hearing from us, because we need to continue to have this dialogue to ensure that the plan is inclusive. Policy and governance, ensuring that we get a great policy and governance review to ensure that the existing policies that are out there, that they are applied or reflected within the plan as well. Data mapping and assessment, and you're going to hear a whole lot more about that from our GIS consultant and our GAP consultant that's going to come on after me. Planning, implementation, and important sustainability. We need to make sure that this plan is not just a document that is only for now. We need to make sure that this exists throughout the future generations. Next slide. What are some areas of opportunity that we have identified? And I think that as we go into your breakout groups, you're going to be able to come up with a whole lot more areas of where we can improve and add to the process of creating these types of plans. One, we know mangrove data exists across multiple agencies and partners. What is an area of opportunity for that? Well, one of those would be basically having our stakeholder engagement, seeing where the data lies, access to information, stakeholder input, essential to making the NMMP realistic and inclusive, and local and field knowledge. That is a priority for it to be captured. Next slide. So this is the proposed process. And like I said, none of this that we're talking about is necessarily set in stone, because we still need to take that information that we get from here and be able to apply it to whatever process that we have in place. So we're starting with the inception and planning. We go into preliminary priority setting, stakeholder engagement and consultations, data collection, and document review. And I know that Ms. Musgrove has mentioned about everyone coming together or forming a group to ensure that we're able to get that review going on. Gap and GIS assessments, refined conservation and restoration priorities. And then we go into the draft NMMP development, and then it goes into the final process with stakeholder validation and technical review. And then we go into finalization and implementation planning. So this process that we have put together, we are hoping, wishful thinking, but we're hoping that it takes about 1.5 years, 18 months. That is the goal. Wow, there was a lot of laughs there. The goal is for this plan to be completed and accepted by November 2028. So as you can tell, we don't really have that much time. So if we hitting the ground, not even running, what Sonic is doing, speeding, zoom. So we have these expected outcomes. We hope that the plan will show improved national coordination among government agencies, non-government agencies, academic institutions, and communities. A clear national framework for mangrove conservation, restoration, sustainable use monitoring, and stewardship. Identification of priority mangrove areas for conservation and restoration. Improved integration of mangrove considerations. Strengthen decision-making through the use of our science-backed information. Enhance protection and management of these ecosystems. Increase awareness of stakeholder participation. So it's not just the persons who we see inside this room today. One of the questions that you will see throughout this workshop is, who else do you think should be here? Let us know. Maybe we didn't get everybody. Maybe you have someone who is in the Southern Islands who should be here as well. So please let us know. Recommendations for sustainable financing. Improve resilience of coastal ecosystems. Establishment of monitoring, evaluation, and adaptive net management. Woo, that was a big word for Elmo. Woo. Adaptive management and a prioritized roadmap of management, conservation, restoration, and policy actions. Next slide. So, to reiterate what has been said throughout this entire workshop, and which will continue to be said, we need the information that you have. We need your ideas. What do you think should be prioritized? I had a conversation with Dr. Bethel earlier, and I said, we'll be asking what islands you feel will be prioritized. And he said, well, really, all of them are priority. Okay, what do you think is going to need to be prioritized? Inception. Because I agree, all of them are priority. But some of you have so much information that can lend to this question here. So please, you take out your phones and scan the code if you took off the Menti app. And start to answer the first question. What is one major threat facing mangroves in the Bahamas? Abatement. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, they used to say not so loud. She's going to put it back up right now.
Are you writing the flag? Are you write out the flag?
I am, along with Megan, who couldn't be here today. She's celebrating in Chile, but no, she's on work trip.
maybe, Keisha, maybe we could share the screen, the presentation from here. So that they could see the QR code at least until we get it sorted on the next one. There you go. Oh, okay. We can move into that. Maybe it's a bit mixed.
Since we're on the second question, I know everyone's getting the second question. This is something that's going to be discussed a bit more inside your breakout groups. Remember when you apply or when you did the registration form, we asked you to choose between two options. Well, your primary option and then your secondary option for what you feel like you'd be able to offer the most information on, right? Yes. So your breakout groups basically will be assigned in that way with either your primary or your secondary option. And we'll discuss more about that after lunch, because after we're done with these presentations, we go to lunch. But what should success for the NMMP look like? This is your individual opinion. So what should success look like for the NMMP? Let's go through just a few. Planning and execution. Sustainability for future generations. Community-centered, policy-driven. Real management. And I see community-centered a few times. And I feel like that is something that is basically echoed throughout this whole workshop. And the reason why we wanted to have it. It's not just to give a lot of presentations, but it is to get your feedback because we need the community involved. If you look around the room and as we did our introductions, you would have noted that there were so many organizations and persons represented here today. So it is important for the NMMP to be sustainable for the future and community-centered. Let's go to the next question. What islands should the NMMP prioritize right now? I think I need to add that there, italicized.
Only one island? You could list as many.
Yeah. Once you're able to put in a multiple, that's fine. All. Dr. Bethel, is that you? All. I feel like it's you. 7 Bahamas. Andros, Grand Bahama. Andros. Exuma. Long Island, and Nagua. I'm happy to say that a lot of these that are coming up, they are on our list to look into first. All islands with mangroves. Cat Island, New Providence. Grand Bahama. Well, right, there's a left Grand Bahamian, so you put Grand Bahamas now. East Grand Bahama, and Nagua, Crooked Island. So as you go through your breakout groups today, take all of the opinions that you would have formulated based off of this. Because you're gonna be in groups and you're gonna basically have to debate to say, which ones should we focus on? What are the reasons behind it? If you look inside your supporting information documents, you would see listed questions that help guide that discussion. So what is it that we are expecting from you at the end of this workshop? So basically, understanding of what existing mangrove-related data sets and reports are out there. Past and current mangrove projects or initiatives. I know Ms. Ingram can name a few off the top of her head right now. Island-specific threats, pressures, and management concerns. Priority areas for conservation restoration. Community concerns. We want to hear what is happening within the community inside these islands and how is it impacted by either development or mangrove degradation in any way. Restoration opportunities and lessons learned. Let's be honest, there's been a lot of restoration that has happened throughout the years. Yes, we in agreement? And I know there is a lot of lessons that have been learned. A lot of things that you can tell us so that we need to put into the plan to ensure that other organizations or even your organization doesn't make the same mistake. Agencies, organizations, and individuals that should be here. Gaps in data, contacts and partners, and practical recommendations that will continue to guide the NMMP, not just for now, but for the future. Because NMMP is an evolving process. Once we write the NMMP, it's not something that's going to remain stagnant or something that wouldn't be needed to change. It has to change because as a country, we're continuously evolving. So give us your recommendations. What do you think is something that we need to consider for the future as well? And as I conclude my presentation, I also want to highlight all of the persons in this room. Thank you so much for taking the time out, in this room and online. Thank you so much for taking the time out to come to this workshop, to impart your knowledge for this workshop so that we can improve and that we can develop an amazing National Mangrove Management Plan. Thank you so much. And while I'm still on the stage, I would like to bring up our GIS consultant who is under the Forestry Unit, Ms. Shara Moss.
This is like graduation season coming across the stage. Usually don't have a stage at workshops.
Let me get it.
Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So my presentation is going to be very generic in terms of the GIS work that can and maybe will happen under the project because we're still sort of in this stage of refining the methodology and the areas. So it's we're at the inception, so it's kind of fitting, right, that this is an inception workshop. But what I'd like to cover today is just sort of with the benefits. Oh, we're going fast.
Sorry.
All right. So it's already been covered what the objectives are. We can slip past that slide. So I'm just gonna give an idea of what GIS offers for this management planning process, an overview of what I will be doing in terms of GIS, me and the support team, and then some of the needs we have for data, and then also what the next steps are moving forward. So as has been said already, it's an 18-month process. So it may seem like a lot for those that aren't familiar with GIS, but it's not a lot of time. So, you know, we are in that process of establishing what can be done in that period, and we hope to have some very useful outputs by the end of it. Yeah. So I would assume that everyone in the room is familiar with mangroves and its benefits. I'm not going to go through that. Slide, please. So we know that they're, you know, economic, social, environmental benefits. These are just a few slides to capture that. But in this process of managing the mangroves, we have to pull as much as we know, as much information as we have to pull that together and see what is useful in terms of mapping and understanding this ecosystem. So what GIS will allow us to do, excuse me, is to look at the extent or the distribution of mangroves across the areas that are identified under the plan. There is going to be some level of prioritization, if not directly through GIS, perhaps through stakeholder involvement. You know, there's going to be an opportunity for us to develop maps that reflect potential areas for restoration, potential areas where you know, zoning or monitoring needs to be put in place. And these are all, I'm saying that as a sort of a broad category because we haven't had a chance to look at the data yet. We haven't collected it yet. So we don't know what we'll be able to provide on the back end as yet. But these are some of the options in terms of what can be done. Obviously, there's tools involved. But ultimately, the goal is to support decision-making when it comes to mangrove management. So we're looking at identifying and potentially prioritizing areas, areas identified for marine and mangrove conservation, and long-term monitoring. So we want to see over time, you know, how areas have changed, whether, you know, positively or negatively. Next slide. So this kind of leads into sort of the thinking of, well, what are the benefits of it? Obviously, you'll be able to track mangrove health or get a glimpse of mangrove health, areas that have been degraded either by storms or other activities. If there's been any significant change over time, you know, depending on the temporal extent that we get, if we can get data from, you know, 10, 15 years ago, we can see how things have changed over that period. It also helps with protected areas management, dealing with stakeholder use conflict. If there are issues in certain areas, you know, GIS can help with, you know, highlighting those, not solving them, but bringing them to the forefront. It will ultimately support the work that's being done at the national level, and, you know, highlight any other issues that may not currently be on the radar. So just a general overview of the process. So we don't have a finalized list yet of what these areas are, and what their boundaries are, but that's in progress. Once we have that, we can identify the areas where there are gaps in information and potentially plan to visit those sites and collect, you know, drone imagery, information on health and that sort of thing. And we also concurrently will be refining the methodology. That process is tied into the inception report. So figuring out exactly how we're going to do the spatial aspect of the work and the field work. And that involves, you know, data collection in general, whether it's from, you know, within the Bahamas or outside of the Bahamas. So we're talking about institutions, government agencies, you know, NGOs, the private sector. We will make an effort to scavenge, to reach out to all of those entities to see what we can pull together. So it was good to hear that TNC has done, you know, a lot of work. I'm familiar with a lot of the work that's been done. So it's good to know that there has been recent work. Thank you, Steve, for that presentation. And, you know, so we're not starting from scratch. I guess that's the thing I want to relay. So once we collect the data that's available, we'll assess it, you know, look at the quality, of it and usability of it for this process and build a geodatabase with usable data in it. So that's the previous slide is really what we plan to do in the first several months upon starting. That's going to take quite a bit of time, especially depending on which islands we visit for field work. But beyond that, the spatial analysis begins, and we'll report on this. We'll be interacting with many of you, if not all of you, that are in the room and others. I know that there's going to be focused, interactions as well. And that'll allow us to get feedback on the maps and the analysis that we've done to date. And we can revise them as needed. And then produce a series of maps and outputs. So whether it's, calculations on, the amount of mangroves in a particular area or throughout the Bahamas, all of that sort of analysis related work. And then we'll also, based on if we're able to get, the prioritization aspect of it done with the data that we have, we'll be developing, priority maps if we have the data and other decision support maps. And then the final data set is going to be packaged, including all the relevant metadata, et cetera, so that beyond the life of this work, the efforts and the data collected can be used to benefit further national and local efforts. We'll also be providing inputs to the plan, obviously, as this is the main reason why we're on board. I just want to say that I'm not working in isolation. I'm working with Trevor Wines out of Canada and Colin Daniels, who's also the founder of a Canadian firm that does this in other parts of the world. So I welcome your support, your data, your contacts on my side. Anything that you think would be of value. Obviously, we have, and this is not a comprehensive list. I know Lindy's going to say, oh, you didn't mention. It's not a comprehensive list, but I just wanted to give you sort of a snapshot of the types of data that we will be looking to acquire and what categories, they fall under. So we're talking about protected areas. I know BNT has a tremendous amount of data. There's been a lot of work done by BNT in the national parks. Biodiversity and conservation features beyond parks as well. There's several organizations that have done work. The socioeconomic info is the one that I think may be the most challenging. But again, we're going to lean on all of you in the room and others to see what we can pull together for this spatial work. And then coastal and maritime activities. For the most part, we anticipate that that'll involve, basic infrastructure, any sort of development or industry. Some areas are so remote that, there may not be anything happening there, but it's good to know as well. Next slide, please. Obviously, high resolution imagery. I really enjoyed Steve's presentation on that. The most recent work in the most recent tools that have become available. In general, land cover and land use, hydrology, the environmental status of these locations, and any sort of physical conditions, as well as coastal risks and vulnerabilities. So I didn't want to go into too much detail, but just to sort of give you an overview of what sort of data we'll be putting together. Again, I say this is not an extensive list. The key for me today, and hopefully, you found this presentation and this, the aspect of GIS in this planning exercise valuable. But the key for me today is, to encourage you to participate, not just in this meeting, but, give your involvement and input as you're engaged throughout the process. We've come a long way in the Bahamas in terms of, trying to make sure we get the right people in the room. I've been in the field for 25 years, and it was very difficult, 25 years ago to get an event like this, to be an inclusive process, to even be considered in terms of the expenses. But, hats off to Forestry Unit, they did a good job here today. But I want to encourage you to help us as well in identifying data sources. If you know where we can find data, if you have data that you think would be valuable to the process, please reach out. We also want to highlight local knowledge, so I'm glad to see we have representation from local government in the room. This is an opportunity for us to do more of that. And when it comes to mangroves, it really is that local perspective that's going to give a lot of the socioeconomic perspective for the mangroves that are included in the project. So I just want to encourage you in those ways to be involved. So this is a list of the deliverables. I mentioned in inception that we'll have to obviously develop that along with the work plan. And then the report on the methodology we plan to use. The spatial outputs would be obviously mapping related, and they're going to be designed to include perspectives and information that tie into the plan, the National Mangrove Management Plan. And then those scenario and decision support maps, again, if the data allows, will be produced as well. And the final package, like I said earlier. So that's all I have for you today. I hope that gives you sort of a general overview of what GIS can do and how we seek to leverage it in the development of the National Mangrove Management Plan. Any questions?
Thank you, Shara. I know you said that you're just looking at how all of this will fit into the NMMP, but I'm wondering if by any chance you will look at it not only as from a mangrove perspective, but mangroves and how they connect to other habitats.
Yes, so connectivity is an aspect that GIS will allow for. It's just a matter of whether we have the data, the data sets that we needed to do those analysis.
We can provide whatever data we may have that we think may be relevant to that connectivity.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you for the offer. Can we write down Rashida Ingram providing data related to connectivity, please? You had a question there?
So just wanted to know what sampling method or statistical method you guys want on inclusion with your study on mangrove. And then also, you said that you plan on collecting data from scratch. And I think in the plan of the experience you would have for the going through the forward, and that would shave off a good amount of time from that 2028 gap that you have.
Good questions. I can answer that with one answer. So like I said, we're still in the phase of developing the work plan. So we haven't confirmed any of that yet. Right? So we know that data exists. We know the TNC has done work. Tim's has done a lot of work as well. But we haven't had a chance to assess what's been done. That's the first time I saw it today, which is which is great. I think it's great. If what has been done, negates something to go in the field, I'm all for it.
the reason why I'm asking in terms of what is the sampling measurements, statistical advantage, but in order to conduct any type of particle research, what the first thing you have to do. If you don't do those, you don't have the data, then you can run into problems where you collect any data, and then if the data doesn't it's not collected and go right to the treatment, then it can be a problem, even having to analyze it.
Yeah, so we don't even know which areas we're going to. That hasn't been identified yet. So once, we have an idea of the extent of the areas, if it's going to be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, once we have that basic information, then we can, address the issues of ensuring that it's statistically sound and the sampling techniques are appropriate.
Thank you. My question is beyond the optical. Which parts of the sector will be looking at the mangroves in?
Again,
Or
we haven't,
beyond, right?
we haven't got to any of that yet.
I see.
We haven't gotten to any level of detail. Sorry, I know that's not useful, but I literally
question.
just
So when you're out there in the field and you're doing the remote sensing, would you be also doing the in situ measurements? Let's say the frost algae that you see. So, for example, if you have the coverage of mangrove areas and you measure X amount of plants in the area, then you can say, well, a given species of mangrove of a given height has a certain carbon content in the above ground and the below ground. But you can only know that if you measure the plants while you're there, and then take the soil samples while you're there, while you take the pictures of the same area. And so one of the shortcomings of our earlier project is that we didn't get the aerial imagery at the same time that we got the above and below ground biomass. And so I recommend that when you're out there, take the hour or two to do a plot, make the measurements. So you can now cross-validate, you go back to your imagery, and you can estimate for a given area of mangrove, what is the above and below ground carbon storage, and that knocks out two birds with one stone.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that input.
Thank you. Reminder that we are taking all recommendations and suggestions.
Hello, Shara. I was with you for a while.
Okay.
I'll let her greet you say hello. On the family islands in our 33 districts, they are very suspicious when persons come into those areas. I could appreciate the level of expertise that you're bringing there, but if you could approach it in understanding, you would need to translate to, I'm using the sign going low, but not low, but more expansive, that those who are in those communities who participate in local government, but not necessarily with bringing the understanding due to it, can understand what it is you're doing and can assist you at whatever level you find it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you would suggest a separate engagement for local government where you can break down.
That's what I'm thinking. I don't want to say separate.
No, but I mean, it would be a focus group type.
Yes.
So it's not that you're picking them out, it's you recognizing that, number one, they are spread across the islands, so we can't get to each one individually. So you can consult them as a collective and share, the information that we think is useful and that we would like to acquire and do it in a way that ensures that they understand what we're asking and what's going to be done with the plan overall.
And then some of the relevancy to them.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I see one more question over to the left. Virtual participants, if you have a question, please raise your hand. We are preparing for the next presentation by Dr. Craig Dahlgren. Before we get to that, we'll take a few more questions.
Hi, Cheryl. Dr. Bethel did reference a point that I wanted to reference as well in terms of above below ground biocarbon stocks, but also the health of the mangroves in terms of sampling for food rates, perhaps, as the hot mangroves are growing, with diameters and heights and so on. So we need sample plots in there in order to assess that information. and then you can project towards the larger scale as well. That's something to consider.
That's a very good point. Again, I defer to the Forestry Unit, the planning team, because they are the ones that are setting the scope for the work and the various criteria that'll be used, field methods and the rest. So
Yeah,
but I
and
think
what-
that's a good, I think both of you obviously had a very good point in that.
Yeah, what I could also share is basically the TOR is a very extensive TOR. A lot of the information that we are requesting will definitely have to come over time. It's based on the 2021 IUCN ecosystem-based principle standards. So there's a lot of things that are referenced in there. And we will definitely send that out for those persons who are interested. And then you can also give us more information and recommendations on what our consultants should be looking at as well.
But we'll make note of all of the comments and suggestions, sure. Is that it?
Yes, I think, oh. Almost.
Super quick question. Where will this data live long-term, and will it be accessible to Bahamian institutions?
Very good question.
That's a very great question. I will refer that to our Director of Forestry, Danielle Hannick, and she will provide a response on a later date.
It will be packaged. So that's all I can see.
Do we have any more questions? All right, so we're going to move into our next presentation. Last presentation, I promised before we go into lunch. My sound is a whole lot better. Wow. Before we go into lunch, and Dr. Dahlgren, are you ready?
I'm just going to full screen. Can you guys see my screen okay there?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for that. What I'm going to do is go over the gap analysis consultancy piece, which is, as was mentioned before, very interrelated to some of the other components as far as developing the national plan and also some of the GIS stuff that Shara just talked about. So for today's workshop, I want to echo what some of the other presenters have said, and really this is less about me presenting what we're going to be doing for this gap assessment, but more having it be an invitation for participation in this process and really looking to get input from all of you in the room and others that you think might be helpful. What I'm going to talk about today is just the scope and direction of what we're going to be doing with this gap assessment, what data we're going to be trying to get to incorporate into it, and then what opportunities there are for stakeholders to be engaged, whether that's individuals and communities, NGOs, researchers, government agencies, really expanding the view of stakeholders so that their views and opinions are included in this analysis. So real quick, just an overview of the project. It's very comprehensive. There's 10 different deliverables as part of it, with a very aggressive timeline. Most of the work is going to be done over the next 6 months, with the final products being prepared then in the first quarter of next year. So it's going to be done very concentrated in time with a lot going into it. The focus of this gap assessment is information we have on mangroves in the Bahamas, and that includes science, policy, restoration,
community perceptions, all of it together, from 2010 till present. And then also as part of this project, we're going to be collecting new data through a stakeholder engagement, specifically for New Providence. And I'll talk about that in a little more detail as I go on here. But really, the whole goal is to see what we know about mangroves in the Bahamas now, what we know about best practices for mangroves worldwide, what we know about restoration, what activities are happening as far as management and protection, what we know about preserving ecosystem services and benefits to communities. And then by understanding what we know, also understand what we need to incorporate as we develop a plan moving forward. What's missing? What else do we need to be doing? Or what do we need to do to safeguard some of these things that we know are important? The approach that this gap assessment is taking involves 4 different work streams, basically, that are interconnected. The first one is more of a literature review approach, and that literature includes the science, legislation, policy. It includes not just things that are available online, but also unpublished data sets that we can find and get access to. Really looking very broadly at what we know about mangroves, what data we have on mangroves, what other information we have from 2010 to the present. In addition to that, there's a second data stream that's looking at stakeholder engagement. So that includes a stakeholder mapping exercise, interviews with NGOs, government agencies involved with mangrove protection, restoration, education, things like that. And then also a community social survey, basically a CAP assessment. So looking at knowledge, attitude, perceptions, how people are using mangroves, how they value mangroves. And that's really going to be focused on New Providence for this first one. Following those, it'll be a synthesis phase where we combine all that information together to see what we know, what's happening, what we need to find out, what else needs to happen, what kind of gaps we identify, and what recommendations we have to fill those gaps. And then the validation stage, presenting this out, getting further input, making sure that everything's been done correctly and the results are aligned with what expectations are for developing this national management plan and refining it further based on that. The rough timeline for all this, we just began this process last month. So we're in very much the setup and inception phase. We have begun the literature review. We've kind of hit all the easy targets with that, and are now doing a deeper dive to try to find what else is out there that might not be so easy and obvious to get. In another month or so, we'll start the stakeholder engagement piece. Really, I think that starts today with a conversation with all of you online and in the room. And that's going to be led by Dr. Carlisa Callwood, who is there today with the help of Makeda Sergio on our team. And I would really encourage everybody to reach out to her to make sure that your voice is heard in that stakeholder engagement piece. And then towards the end of the data collection is when we'll have the synthesis and validation occur towards the end of this year. So how can you all contribute? Well, today is the first opportunity as we're presenting this, really getting feedback as we go along throughout the day today to make sure we get started on the right foot, to make sure we're off in the right direction and that we don't have to do course corrections later on. So that's important. Throughout the process, there will also be other opportunities for engagement. There will be a technical working group that will provide feedback and reviews on everything. There will be, like I mentioned, the interviews with key agencies and with communities in New Providence that will be ongoing throughout the summer. We will be reaching out actively to get any data, any gray literature, any policies or procedures that your organization or agency might be involved with that should be incorporated into this. And then there will be a more formal engagement towards the end when we're rolling out this validation phase to get some comments on the near final version of this gap assessment as well. Just to go into a little bit of detail about each one of these phases, for the literature review, it is starting to cover law and policy, international treaties that affect the Bahamas that involve mangroves, a lot of Bahamas-specific science, and a lot of global science as well that provide information on restoration management practices, etc. And then looking at unpublished data sets, the status of different things. So this is really something that we're relying on people that are actively engaged in this work to be providing it to us. If we're not aware of it, we'll be reaching out to some as well. Some of the data sets that we're already using are ones that you'll see Perry Institute on a lot of these because I'm directly involved with those, but there's also a lot of data sets that are available internationally. Steve talked about some, for example, with the mapping that the Nature Conservancy has done. We've just finished a initial project looking at several islands with Environmental Defense Fund and the fly fishing industry on blocked creeks in the Bahamas. We're working with Bahamas Mangrove Alliance on mapping out damage from Hurricane Dorian and restoration of that damage. So a lot of these things are being incorporated into it already. And just to show you what some of that looks like, sort of to complement the satellite-based mapping that Steve talked about earlier, we also have access to what we've been doing at the Perry Institute with respect to higher spatial and temporal resolution drone mapping of some of the areas affected by Hurricane Dorian and control areas of Abaco and Grand Bahama, or areas that were mapped out as part of this blocked creek assessment with Environmental Defense Fund and Forestry and the Fly Fishers. So we have, in addition to the national coverage that Steve mentioned, very focused high spatial and temporal resolution data as well that can be incorporated into those GIS data sets that Shara talked about. We also have information from partners in the Bahamas Mangrove Alliance, many of which are there with you today, and what restoration is occurring and where, and we're monitoring to look at the success of that restoration and how it's impacting mangrove communities across Abaco and Grand Bahama in particular, because that's where most of it's going on right now. But we also have similar data for other places as well. So that's kind of on the ecological side, as well as the policy and legislative side. And we also are looking at the second work stream, which is looking at what stakeholders are doing and looking at the social data collection within communities. So that really is something that, again, starts today and will continue throughout the summer. And we'll have opportunities for Dr. Callwood to be in touch with all of you and to also get a deeper dive into what communities around New Providence are thinking about mangroves, how they're using the mangroves there, how they value them. And hopefully over time that'll expand to other islands as well. But right now it's focused on New Providence based on funding and logistical constraints. Dr. Callwood can talk more about this if there's any questions about it, but we have developed, or she has developed, a semi-structured interviews for looking at key agencies, their capacity, their mission, their mandate for working with mangroves, what policies guide that, what knowledge and data systems are available, and then trying to see where the gaps are. And then she can also speak to the CAPA survey. So looking at, again, knowledge, attitudes, perceptions, how social and economic situations can affect that, looking at values and beliefs and uses and behaviors around mangroves. So once we have all this data over the next 4 months or so, that will be then the trigger to go into the synthesis phase where we look at what is going on, compare that to what's being done globally as far as best practices, as far as management guidelines, as far as restoration practices and things like that. And then that will inform where there's gaps and what recommendations we can make to address those gaps as we move forward with the plan development after that. And this will look at things from the policy and legal side of things, the governance side of things, looking at the technical data, looking at the science, looking at financial ability to manage mangroves, restore mangroves, things like that, and where the capacities lie. Looking at the social and community framework for that, and then a key thing that Seth has brought up before in some of his questions, but looking at climate adaptation and really having this be assessment that can help inform future conditions as well through that climate adaptation piece. So I'll just sum up with just saying that this is just the start. We encourage, welcome, want all kinds of input from you. So questions, comments, all feedback is good feedback at this phase. I know that I've mentioned some of the data sets that we've been working with, and I know there's a lot missing. I know that, for example, University of the Bahamas has done soil carbon assessments for Abaco and Grand Bahama that I didn't mention, that I don't have access to, that definitely need to be included into this. And I'm sure there's a lot of others as well. So definitely please reach out if you're aware of things. And it'll definitely feed into the data acquisition phase. If things don't align with how you think we should be doing things, also please let us know. This will be very helpful early on to recalibrate things and adjust if necessary, or make sure things get incorporated into our approach that might be overlooked or underemphasized at this point. And then we can see how to carry this forward then. And again, the timeline is up there. These are right now the milestones that we have, but again, there's plenty of opportunity between now and November, even after that, to provide input. Well, I would just like, if we can get it earlier, the better, so that we can get off to a good start with this. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. I'll take any questions, and also welcome Dr. Callwood to chime in on any of the stakeholder engagement and social science questions as well.
Any questions?
I'm not sure if there's any questions. I think everyone's muted, so I can't hear anything right now.
Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Thank you for that, Dr. Dahlgren. I also wanted to know if somehow the data set would be able to include the transparency issues or the permitting issues, especially in certain areas that may come up during the GIS assessments, but whether or not you'd be able to address those in your gap analysis.
I think Dr. I would be able to address that.
Yeah, so that's going to be one of the questions included in the key agency.
But to answer
interviews.
the part that I was able to hear, I do think that it's an important question. I do think that those issues need to be brought up as far as the guidance and policy around permitting, data sharing, anything like that, if that was part of the question.
Yeah, and I'll add on that. It's fun. We'll include that as part of the questions related to challenges that any of the agencies doing mangrove-related work are having, because even just in general conversations about any of the science work, those are issues that have been surfaced and flagged, so we'll be sure to include that as well.